Start with something that obviously has affected a lot of industries, the coronavirus. How do you see that impacting designers' plans to participate in New York Fashion Week and really the effect on the fashion industry as a whole?
Yeah, I would say there's a very, very direct impact, which is very obvious that if you see the only fashion show in New York Fashion Week right now that's made by a Chinese designer, is that a lot of roles are empty because a lot of fashion designers, fashion buyers, Instagrammers, fashion influencers couldn't be able to come because of the travel restriction that's imposed last Friday. So the Fashion Week began the past Monday, and very unfortunately, the Fashion Week was really hit by the travel restriction that imposed by the White House. And last week, the World Health Organization also announced this global health emergency. So this week is really the entire world has raised their consciousness about how serious the coronavirus is. So this is a very direct impact to the New York Fashion Week. If we step back to look at the bigger picture, then the entire Fashion Week is basically not only the entire fashion industry is very much influenced by the corona outbreak,
right,
which is a lot of retail stores, let's say Nike, let's say Adidas, a lot of half of them basically shutters, because if you go to China right now, empty streets, people are basically isolating themselves in home to prevent the very serious transmission.
Now, a lot of people perhaps may not be familiar with all the different kind of fashion weeks they have in China. Do you see the coronavirus affecting people's ability to go and see some of the shows? And also, how do the shows themselves differ in terms of the different flavors that each region has?
I think in the New York Fashion Week, really last year, we see this huge, very outstanding shows that was initiated by Peace Birds, and other, China-originated brands. But this year, we see more appearance of Hong Kong designers, which is very unique and special because Hong Kong has always been really the center of Asia's fashion. But this year, we really see a very different New York Fashion Week.
So then in terms of the trends that you're seeing on China's runways and the clothing stores and on the sites, how do they compare to what's hot in terms of other international fashion centers?
Yeah, this is also a very good question. So I think very different from the other fashion centers in the world. I think that China, as a very unique economic body, is heavily online-based. It's heavily influencer-driven economy. So in the rest of the world, we see online purchase is actually a supplement of the physical retail stores. But in China, I think the fashion scene is basically driven by a lot of fashion influencers who are doing, 24 hours live streaming in China, who are using their social medias, their blogs to promote their brands, to promote different fashion brands, and to driven the sales.
So then in terms of the most globally recognized Chinese designers, who stands out for you? And then what about up-and-comers that we should also be watching?
Oh, yeah, so this is a good question. There's a lot of names. I actually made a list. So Guo Pei is obviously going really, really strong. I saw many of her exhibitions going around the world and also in the U.S. There's Christina Lau, there's Masha Ma, there's Yang Li, and there's Ma Ke, and there's also Zhang Huishan, who also opened his first store in London. So a young generation of Chinese designers who really had a lot of international exposures are gaining their positions in the fashion world, and they're utilizing different approaches to basically expose themselves to the fashion world. I would say a lot of them are, many of them are very fashion educated, but have a very, very strong sense, very smart about being the taste setter, the trend setter.
And just quickly, your outlook for menswear collections that don't usually get a lot of love, do you see that going well in China?
I'm sorry, what's the question again?
Oh, just quickly, how would you rate China's menswear collections?
Oh, China menswear collections. It's interesting. So Well, I think for a lot of men's collections, this time in Fashion Week, like a lot of them are still very, I see a more like a trend of being driven by sports brand and being driven by a more healthier lifestyle. And I believe, you know, really after this coronavirus, there's a very significant trend I can, you know, maybe predict or see is more fashion brands or more people are going to promote a fitness-driven, a healthier lifestyle-driven kind of vibe. So this is, you know, one thing we can really conclude from the coronavirus outbreak.
Really interesting stuff. Thank you so much, Afra Zhao Wang, their host of Loud Murmurs.